What's going on, everyone? And welcome to Pokemon Colosseum. Pokemon Colosseum is what myself and other people would describe as the dark horse game of the franchise. Despite still being one of the best-selling games on the GameCube, I feel like this one doesn't really get talked about a lot, which is interesting because it was technically the first home console 3D Pokemon RPG. Sure, you had the Stadium games, but this is a full-blown story mode that we're looking at here, not just a battle sim. It was developed by a development team known as Genius Sonority that knew very little about Pokemon going in, so as a result you get this kind of hybrid experience of the Pokemon feel that you know and love, with some elements of a traditional RPG as well. And for a series like Pokemon that is famously known for being very formulaic and sticking to its roots, it's really cool that a dev team was willing to go above and beyond and give us something truly unique for our first home console Pokemon experience. Over the past several years, I've played through Colosseum a few different times and have gained a lot of game knowledge, and I'm really excited to share that with you today. Anyway, let's get started. After a downright explosive start to our journey, we make a quick pit stop at a small gas station in the desert. We see our daring escape on the news and challenge one of the locals to a quick battle. And in this battle, we'll be introduced to our not just one, but two starter Pokemon. Starting off with Espeon. Espeon is a fast Psychic-type special attacker that learns a plethora of useful support moves to help aid its partner. Since Colosseum is played entirely in double battles, these moves are especially useful, since you can have one Pokemon attack while the other supports, making these moves even more viable than they would be in a singles game. Where Espeon tends to fall a bit short is in its attacking move pool. You're going to be using a level-appropriate Psychic-type attack, starting with Confusion, then Psybeam at 36 before you get Psychic at level 47. After that, you'll probably be using Hidden Power if you're able to get a type that is special, because remember this is pre-physical special split. So, as far as the damage front goes, it's going to be almost exclusively Psychic-type attacks. But when you have a 130 special attack, that doesn't matter too much. This is also a really good time for me to mention that both Espeon and its counterpart Umbreon will both start with maxed out happiness, meaning that Espeon's starting move Return will already have its max power of 102, making it really strong for this point of the game, even though it's being calculated off of its far weaker physical attack. Next up is Umbreon, who is just about the polar opposite. This thing is strictly a wall. It's slow, doesn't do much damage, but is able to soak up tons and tons of hits, meaning it tends to stick around for a long time. The problem is that a lot of the moves that make Umbreon really good either are inaccessible during the main story or are more geared to multiplayer. But I find more often than not, Umbreon just ends up using Bite every single turn because it doesn't have much of anything better to do on its turn. It's not a terrible Pokemon at all and can be very useful in the right situations, but I find it a bit too stagnant in its playstyle for my personal liking. Umbreon won't be staying on the team long term, but I do intend on using it a bit to help with some of the early sections. After easily taking down Willy and his two Zigzagoons, he suggests that we head towards Phenac City, where we end up running into a couple of weirdos at the front gate of the city. And we find out that these dudes kidnapped a random person, shoved them into a body bag, and are just lugging them around in the back of their truck. No, I am not kidding. This is a Pokemon game that somehow got an E for everyone rating back in 2003. We end up defeating them quite easily, and we rescue a girl named Rui, who was supposedly kidnapped due to her ability to see Pokemon that possess unnatural black auras. In order to ensure Rui's safety, we end up guiding her to the mayor's house, where we run into yet another odd person before being told by Mayor Escade that we should enter a knockout challenge at the world-famous Phenac Colosseum, while he investigates Rui's case. However, upon arriving to the stadium, we find out that we just barely missed the entry for the knockout challenge. So, we head back into the city and run into the bald dudes from the criminal hideout that we blew up and stole from, where we uncover a pretty shocking twist, that our main character is a former member of this organization, known as Team Snag'em, and we also learn that the piece of gear that we stole from their hideout is called the Snag Machine, which is a device that allows for a trainer to steal Pokemon from other trainers in battle. And as you can probably tell, they aren't too happy that we have this, so we end up chasing them off, and Rui tells us that even despite who we used to be, she still thinks we're a good person, and wants to stick by our side. Rui also suggests that we should go look for some Pokeballs, for a nefarious purpose perhaps. So we walk around town and we ask at a local shop. This is where we learn that in the Ore region, where this game takes place, that there aren't any wild Pokemon due to the very harsh climate. Therefore, Pokeballs are not a very well sought after item, but that perhaps we might have more luck at the Outskirt stand. And luckily, the shopkeeper happens to have a couple laying around. Now at this point in the game, you can buy regular Pokeballs or you can buy Great Balls. Given how much money you start with, I think it's best to just buy a bunch of Great Balls at the start. You're going to be catching unevolved to mid-stage Pokemon in the early level 30s, so I think Great Balls are the most appropriate. After we return to Phenac City, we're told by a bystander that the two guys from earlier have come back, and have supposedly brought some reinforcements with them. So, we head up to the mayor's house to check on him, and we end up meeting the greatest villain in JRPG history. His name is none other than Mirror B, who, trust me, we're gonna be seeing a lot of in the near future. But for now, he just tells his henchmen to take care of us, because that worked so well last time, before playing some epic disco music and walking out of the room. So, we end up battling the henchmen again. First one, Folly, goes down without much of a fight. He just has a Whismur and a Lotad. However, his counterpart Trudely is where things get a bit more interesting. He starts off with a Duskull and a Spinarak, so we got, like a Bug type, we got a Ghost type, some interesting type matchups here for sure. However, his third Pokemon, Makuhita, is unusual. Rui affirms what she saw earlier, a strange black aura coming from this Makuhita, and the way it's behaving is unlike anything I've ever seen before. This Pokemon is willing to attack us, like an actual person. We quickly deduce that something horrible has been done to this Pokemon, and that the best thing to do is use the Snag Machine to rescue it from its trainer. And that is how you obtain Pokemon in Pokemon Colosseum. There are no wild encounters in this game. You steal your Pokemon from other trainers, which is such an insane concept, but I love it. Totally leans into the whole vigilante kind of vibe we've got going, and I love it. I just love it so much. And everyone I talk to when they play this game blind for the first time is so shocked by it. After defeating Folly and Trudely, they scurry away without much more of a problem. And we decide to make it our mission to rescue as many of these Pokemon as we can. So, these Pokemon with black auras, they start out with what is called a heart gauge, and our goal is to lower this heart gauge as much as we can until it's empty. Gradually, as you lower the heart gauge, your Pokemon will eventually relearn some of its old moves, and you'll also figure out what nature it has. This is really important for calculating your overall stats. Every Shadow Pokemon will start off with a move called Shadow Rush. This is a 90 power physical typeless attack that does 1/16 recoil to the user. It's a really powerful attack, especially for early on, and it allows for any Pokemon to start fighting on your team almost immediately. Shadow Rush also has one other side effect that we'll get into a bit later. Now, getting into Makuhita as an actual Pokemon and as a potential member of your team. This thing's interesting. I like it quite a bit. Now, normally you might think, oh, this is awesome, I can evolve it in just one level. However, these Pokemon with black auras, one of the downsides of using them is that you cannot level them up right away, and it will be quite a while until Makuhita is able to evolve. Not an unbearably long time, but it is something that you want to keep in mind. There are numerous really good TMs that you can teach it that are quite easy to access, and its abilities are really good as well. Honestly, either of them are great. If you go for Guts, you can have ridiculous physical power if you get statused, which in Colosseum, especially late game, can happen quite a bit. However, Thick Fat gives you easy switch-ins and great resistances on super common types, meaning that it's able to stick around for a really long time and really lean into its bulk. Makuhita is pretty solid, but we're going to have a lot of options coming up, so just keep that in mind. Now, you may have also noticed that there are 3 trainers blocking the exits to Phenac City. Each of them have a Pokemon with a black aura that we are able to catch, but we are only able to catch one at this moment in time. You will have opportunities to catch the other 2 later, but you kind of have to make a choice here. And guess what we're going to be doing? Catching ourselves a starter Pokemon. Starting off with Bayleef. Now, you may be a bit surprised by this, but this line is actually quite solid. Colosseum is a fantastic game for the Chikorita line, probably its best performing game in series history. While it lacks the really good status moves that some of its fellow grass types get, Meganium, or Bayleef in this case, gets access to both Reflect and Light Screen, which is really helpful for double battles, because again, you can have one Pokemon set up and another attack. Bayleef is also a perfect partner for a fire type, as you can have either Bayleef or your fire type use Sunny Day, and both of them will benefit from it. The fire type will have its moves powered up, and Bayleef will be able to use its most powerful move in Solar Beam every single turn without any need for setup. Overall, while I still think it's the worst choice of the 3, it performs really solid in this game, and I don't think you should count it out. Next up is Quilava. Quilava plays almost identical to how Charizard plays in Generation 1. They have the exact same base stats and learn most of the same moves. So if you're an older Pokemon fan and you've played Red and Blue and you used a Charmander, Quilava will be super accessible and easy for you to use, because it plays almost identically. It plays very simple. It uses Flame Wheel and Fire Blast, and then maybe tack on a couple physical moves. Unfortunately, its bread and butter Flamethrower Thunder Punch combo is not possible in this game because there's no way for it to learn Thunder Punch at any point, but it's still really solid. And last but not least, and the Pokemon that I'm looking to catch for my team, Croconaw. Croconaw is what I consider to be the middle of the road choice. It's pretty good at doing damage, but is also quite tanky. And it's not horribly slow either. It starts off with Surf, or I mean, it gets it after you lower the heart gauge a bit, but Surf is one of the best moves in the entire game. It is a 95 power, 100% accurate move that hits both opponents. However, there is a 70% modifier thrown over that damage calculation, so you're not doing a full 95 power to both opponents, but it's still really strong. And it's very versatile in what it can do. You can teach it water moves, some ice moves, some fighting moves, some normal moves, some ground moves. This thing is super versatile in what it can do, and it will take pretty much any move that you give it and use it pretty well. Overall, I'm really excited to use Croconaw on this team. Now, you may have noticed that Makuhita just went into a phase called Hyper Mode. Now, what Hyper Mode does is really cool. So, it increases the critical hit ratio of Shadow Rush to a whopping 90.625%, meaning that you're going to crit on Shadow Rush nearly every single hit. The downside, though, is that while in Hyper Mode, there is a risk of your Pokemon disobeying. They can do a variety of things. They can attack you, although nothing will happen. They can attack their partner, which can be really dangerous. Or they can completely disobey you, go to sleep, or use a random move. The rate at which a Pokemon goes into Hyper Mode is calculated using a few different things. It takes into account how low your heart gauge is. Typically, the lower the heart gauge, the more frequent the rate. It'll also take into account what nature your Pokemon has, which isn't the most useful because you can't see the nature until the heart gauge is at least a few bars down, and the frequency of which you are using Shadow Rush. The more you use Shadow Rush, the higher the chance of you going into Hyper Mode is. So that's also important to keep in mind. And just like that, we've caught Croconaw as well. Normally I have a lot harder of a time with the Johto starters, but he went in the ball pretty easy, which is awesome. Now I think this is also an important time to mention that in Colosseum, most Pokemon don't have their typical catch rates. Most of the time they're adjusted for game balance. So in the case of the Johto starters, normally they're coded to have a 45 catch rate. But in this game, it's raised up to 180, so they are a lot easier to catch than they normally, hypothetically speaking, would be, since at this point in the series you could never catch them. Also a good time to mention that all the Johto starters come holding an appropriate item, so Croconaw will have the Mystic Water, Quilava will have the Charcoal, and Bayleef will have the, what's it called again? Miracle Seed, that's what it is. So even if you aren't going to use a Johto starter on your team, I still suggest catching one of them that has the item that you want. And one last thing that we're going to do in Phenac City is check out this place, the pre-gym. This is this isn't like an official Pokemon gym or anything, this is just a place where you can come, do a couple battles, and lower some heart gauges. This area is totally optional, you don't need to come here. I personally just like coming here for the extra experience, and for this up here. A lot of people don't know about this, but this is an item you can get called the Strategy Memo. And essentially you can just view 3D models of all the Pokemon, you can look at their height, their weight, and stuff. It's not the most useful thing, but if you like checking out old 3D models, if that's your thing, then this is a cool little thing that you can use. As far as the battles go in this place, they're not the most interesting, and again, they aren't required, so I'm probably just going to speed through all of these. However, while we go through these battles, I want to mention a couple kind of neat things about Phenac City and about Pokemon Colosseum, some world building stuff. So first and foremost, the Ore region, where this game takes place, is based off of the state of Arizona, which is interesting because a lot of people think that the first US-based region was Unova in Generation 5, but it was actually this game in Gen 3, which is pretty neat. Also, the name Phenac City is derived from the Phenac fox, which are typically native to desert regions, and given the fact that Phenac City is a desert oasis, I'd say it fits quite nicely. The next town that we're going to be going to also has a similar naming convention, which I'll bring up when we get there. Also, I want to bring up one more cool thing, which is that Pokemon Colosseum composer, Tsukasa Tawada, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, I apologize if I'm not, has a really cool YouTube channel where he uploads covers from games that he has done composing work for. And all of his music sounds absolutely incredible. I highly suggest you all check it out. His composing style is the big reason why Colosseum has one of my favorite video game soundtracks of all time. And as a matter of fact, this battle theme, I'm just gonna let it play out for the rest of these battles, because it is just awesome. After we defeat the pre-gym, the leader Justy offers us the opportunity to fight him one-on-one once we have a full team of 6 Pokemon. Now, while we could go and get 6 Pokemon pretty quickly, I don't suggest coming back and fighting Justy until later. The item that you get for beating him is not very useful at the moment, and he's like level 40, it's a bit misleading. Although, just a spoiler, he does use evasion strats, so I feel like if I did do that, it would be an absolute meme fest, and the fight would probably be 40 minutes long. So, I don't know, maybe there's some good entertainment value in that, but I don't really feel like doing it. Alright, now that we've knocked out the pre-gym, we've done pretty much everything we would want to do in Phenac City up to this point. So, I think we're going to end it off here. Next time on Pokemon Colosseum, we'll be heading out into the world and seeing what kind of leads we can find. See you guys in the next one.